like Stonehenge, they took stones usually and they made alignments on the ground, or they built temples that were aligned to certain celestial events. And when I gave you all assignments last week, I tried to pick some that were related to the sun, the moon, the stars, mainly those. Jordan got a meteorite, which fell from the heavens once upon a time, and study what it was that what was their purpose, how did they line it up, etc., etc. So that was my introduction. And these temples, I think, were used for two basic reasons. One is a calendar, because they really got started in the last 10,000 years when we gave up hunting and gathering, when, by the way, the moon goddess was one of the most important in those days. Once we became agricultural, wherever that was and whenever that was, somehow we switched the hierarchy, and then Apollo, whatever his name was, became the sun god. And so these monuments became, on the one hand, a calendar. You need to know when to plant the peas. And the stars will tell you, or the position of the sun in the sky will tell you. And to mark religious ceremonies. So, Mary Lou, we're going to begin with you. I tried to order this first on the sun people, and you had a sundial. So, did you sent in a picture? Melanie's finding it.
Yep.
So everybody can see it. Oh.
Share the screen here.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Everybody can see the sundial now?
Yep.
Okay. Mary Lou, tell us about the sundial.
Okay, the earliest date for a sundial I found was 1500 BC, before Christ was born. It was in ancient Egyptian and Babylonian astronomy. It tells time by the sun, with a shadow that's cast by a gnomon. The point that sticks up over here is called the gnomon, Gnomen, and that one, I guess the shadow is just right straight up and down. But as the sun moves, it will make a wider shadow, and that tells you what time it is.
All right. Did you say you got a sundial for Christmas present? You decide you're going to set it up in your garden.
Okay.
You need to know at least 3 things before you set it up that it will tell accurate time for your garden.
Yes. You need to know your the degree, the latitude.
Yep, latitude.
And you need to know the angle of where the same, you want the dial has to be the same angle as the angle of the sun, the earth to the sun. I don't know what the third one is. Longitude?
Okay. Well, no, you need to know your latitude. I think you need to know the date, which might have to do with the angle, and the time of the day. And if you know those 3 things.
Oh, in order to align it.
Yeah, align.
Okay.
And the smart kid in the back row of the class is going to say, yeah, well, if you don't have a watch to know what time it is, how are you going to do it? But we're not going to go there today. That's beyond our, we don't have time for that. Okay, now Melissa, you weren't here last year sometime, and maybe some other people missed it. We did an experiment. Melissa, you might want to try and do it. It's quite fun. Someday when it's sunny, early in the morning, you go out in your front yard and you face north, and you stand there. You become the sundial, your body, and your shadow, depending on the time of the year. Let's choose March 21st, the equinox, one of them. And so on that day, the sun is rising due east. Doesn't matter where you are on the earth, so your latitude is not going to bother you. And as the sun comes up in the east, your shadow is going to be over to the west. And then as the day progresses, the shadow will move around you on the north. Wait a minute. I always have to stop and think. We're in the northern hemisphere. The shadow will be to the north of you. And as you stand facing north, you can see that line, which would be like to 9 o'clock, moving up to noontime in the middle of the day, and then swinging around to 3 o'clock, if we had a clock on the ground by your feet, as the sun went down. Which is why when they finally made clocks and watches, probably 1200s, we called the clock goes around clockwise, because that's what the shadow did.
Mm.
The shadow went clockwise around your feet.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
That's
I mean,
fascinating.
we never asked, why do we call that?
Mhm.
Or the lodgepole pine, what it's called. So anyway, that's one experiment you can all try and do. It's kind of fun. And then I think I had 2 vocabulary words, 3 really. Think of the North and the South Pole. And we talked about longitude lines. So they're the lines that start at one pole or the other and they go around the Earth through the poles. When the sun is moving across the sky during the day from east to west, when it gets halfway there, whatever time that is, winter, summer, it's different, right? That's called the meridian, the halfway point, which is once again why we have AM, anti-meridian. I never knew that. And PM, post-meridian,
Yeah.
after the halfway point. Duh. Okay. And the other
Oh,
word which
So
we
much
learned,
I've forgotten.
yeah. Well-
I haven't thought of this in years.
Remember psychology, the mean, the meridian, and the whatever? Yes. All right. And the other word which we knew a long time ago was zenith, which is the high point in the sky of a star or the sun. So, Marilyn, do you have anything else to add to the sundial?
Yes, you have to keep in mind that this is solar time. And so
Oh, yes.
you have to adjust for daylight savings time when that comes.
Of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because when they invented it, we did not have
Yeah,
daylight
right.
savings time. All right. So that was Mary Lou's. She was number 1. Number 2, Bob and Ann are late today and may not be able to get it. So I'm going to cover it. And Melanie spent 10, 15 minutes beforehand hunting for an image. And Rima also spent 10 minutes trying to find a date. And good old Google just didn't really easily have it accessible. Melissa, if you and I were still traveling and went to see the stones of England, this is one place I would like to go.
Oh.
We're up in the Hebrides, those islands off the coast of Scotland in the North Atlantic. And we are looking more or less east across a loch towards a low mountain range,
Beautiful.
which is called the Sleeping Beauty. And some of you may, I think this is such a wonderful combination of nature, landscape, and somebody moved a stone and somebody kept track of what the moon was doing. It's part of Callanish, which is hundreds, if not thousands of stones that have been lined up on one of these islands in a variety of patterns that keep track of a variety of celestial events. But the Sleeping Beauty one goes back to, who remembers? Jordan, are you here or do I just see your J? Are you with us? I don't know what he's doing. Okay. Who remembers the Saros cycle?
Is that
Okay, Mel, you have to speak up so we can hear you.
well, what if I get it wrong?
Well, then you get it wrong.
It's the sort of the northern and southernmost points the sun rises.
Not the sun,
No, oh,
the moon.
The moon.
Okay, we all know that Stonehenge is set up for, among many things, it keeps track of the sunrise and sunset along the eastern and the western horizons. And we all know here in the winter, the sun tends to rise, let me see here, that's south, right? Okay. To the southeast in the morning. When the equinox comes, it's moved back up to the east. Then it keeps going towards the north. And then middle of summer, it rises in the northeast.
Mhm.
The moon does the same thing, although most people don't really pay attention much to the moon. It has an 18 roughly and a half year cycle. 9 years moving north, 9 years moving back to the south. And each end of the cycle is called a standstill because for a day or well, a night or two, it seems to sit on the horizon at the same spot. And somebody thousands of years ago noticed that if you stood at a certain spot looking towards the moonrise, the southernmost point, called the southern standstill, the moon would rise when you use your right over her head.
This is it.
Yeah, so the moon would be over her head. And so they lined up one of those calendar stones. So if you stood behind the stone on that particular day, which is going to be, we looked it up, I think, I'm not sure that Google is right, April 2025, it'll reach the southernmost part of its arc and rise right over her head. So I love this sort of thing, where once again, nature is combined with our thinking about it, keeping track of things. Alrighty. Melanie, you had, I cannot pronounce it. I gave Melanie a toughie from Mexico.
Oh, it was so fun though.
It was fun. It was Venus. Okay, so we're done with our sun now. Now we move to a planet.
Well,
At Chichen Itza, there's one thing that tracks the sun.
Okay.
The temple, the pyramid
Right.
at the equinox, it makes the snake. There's a snake head at the bottom
Right.
of the temple. And at the equinox, the shadow the sun makes on the steps
Mm-hmm. Makes it look like it's
makes it
moving.
look like the snake is moving.
Moving. Yep.
And the number of steps on the pyramid, there's 91 steps on each side. And then one step at the top. So
Okay.
there's 365 steps on the temple. So it tracks that.
Okay, so that's the sun.
yeah, that's the
But
sun.
the other one I
But
gave
the
you,
other
that
one.
weird name that I couldn't pronounce.
The-
For Venus, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And oh, whoops,
Oops.
that's not it.
So this is what the building looks like. El Caracol,
Okay.
which translates into the snail.
The snail.
Yeah.
And that is a very unusual shape, I think, for South American temples, right?
Yes.
Domes like that you don't usually see.
Yes,
And it's very decayed now.
Falling apart.
Yeah. But it's aligned with the motions of Venus, and the Mayans considered the Venus to be the twin of the sun and the war god, and so they would use Venus to tell them when to go to war or into battle. And so the staircase here faces 27.5 degrees north of west, which is the northernmost point that Venus rises.
Okay.
And then I'm going to show you.
Northwest, that would be set, right? It sets in the northwest, right?
the
Oh,
northern
no, never mind.
27
Forget
degrees.
what I just said. Depends on whether it's a
Um,
morning or evening star.
The diagonal formed with the Buddha building tracks the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. It also tracks. Oh yeah, Venus is sun. Venus is set. Venus is set.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, wait a second here. I forget who it was. I think I asked last time, and I cannot remember, or if I asked Jordan on the phone. I had read somewhere that thousands of years ago, people did not realize that the morning star and the evening star were the same thing. But then I read somewhere and forgot who first figured that out. Now, if I remember correctly, either Jordan or somebody in the group said it was Pythagoras, that guy who, the geometry, the triangle guy with the hypotenuse. He also realized that, oh, this is the same celestial object.
and then
there were windows in that dome that show different positions of Venus in different times.
Hello?
So they're
Hello?
considered-
Yes? Oh, hi,
This is
Regina.
Regina,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can't understand very much of what you and Melanie are saying. I don't know, are you guys moving around or something?
Nope.
Oh, no? Where are you? Melissa,
I'm on my
Regina?
phone, but I could hear Mary Lou Cartledge very clearly, but you guys are like in and out, and
Yeah.
I can't understand what you're saying.
Anybody else having that problem?
Yes.
Mary Lou is, Melissa is,
Oh.
everybody is. All right, we'll try to speak up. Will that help? Regina, can you hear us
See, I
better
couldn't
now?
understand what you said. I could understand. I couldn't understand what you said first, but I think you said something about much better now.
All right, we'll try and
I
speak
could,
louder.
When you
it's
talk,
not,
when your head is straight ahead, we can
Oh.
hear you better than when you turn your head towards Melanie.
All right,
Melody.
I'll put a mirror here so I can see Melanie.
And
Thank
Okay,
Melanie,
thanks, guys. Let us
I
know,
think
because
the
we don't know.
mask-
Melissa,
I
what?
I think the mask, Melanie, may be muffling your
Yes.
voice.
Her
Okay.
voice is soft.
okay.
Melissa, you're new. Regina, like me, does not have a computer, but she's very faithful. And whether she's on the bus to Wellsville or walking around or sitting out in the snow outside the library, she's on her phone. So anyway, that was Regina
So-
that just came on.
I will lower my mask temporarily. But so this building tracks the northern position of Venus, the southern position of Venus, and the sunset at equinox through the various windows in the dome. There are many buildings at Chichen Itza that have astronomical significance. So I really encourage you to check it out because it's super fascinating.
Melanie has a problem of, as she said, about whatever that was a few months ago. She goes down the rabbit hole.
The rabbit hole.
She thinks it's a real simple assignment. and next thing you know, it's hours later and she's still wandering the highway. Okay. By the way, if nobody has gotten up yet at 5 in the morning, Venus is the brightest, Melissa, it's been in like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 16 years or something. Due to its position in the sky in relationship to us and the sun. It's really, 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 really bright. Hi, Debbie. And it's gorgeous. So you need to get up and see it because it won't be that way forever. And I should have written them down and brought it with me. Venus has a very weird cycle of morning star, evening star, no star. And what happened was it had been all summer and fall, our evening star. See, we saw it in the twilight to the west. And then at the end of December, it vanished, which meant it went behind the sun. But 8 days later, only 8 days, it popped up in the east as the morning star. And it will continue to be the morning star for almost 8 months. I forget the days, 250 days, you can look it up. Then it will disappear again for 50 days. So it's not an equal cycle. And then reappear as the evening star for another 8 months. So I guess I'm going to pause here and do one of my things about science. Science is based on observations and keeping records. And then looking at the records and saying, what is going on here? And then trying by using the rational part of our brain, figuring out what is going on. And eventually we come up with a theory. And then we make more observations, more calculations, and hopefully we find more or less the truth. And we then call it a hypothesis. And an example, of course, is forever people believe the Earth is the center of everything. And everything in the sky went around it. Because that's what observation on the surface suggested was true. But as time went on, and more observations were made, and more records were kept. Finally, by the 1500s, certain people like Copernicus and Galileo said, you know what? This is not working anymore. We are not the center. And so gradually then, through science, observation, record-keeping, thinking, we come to a better sense of what is true. And with Venus, which is a very complicated pattern, I admire the Mayans, but Pythagoras, who first, figured out, oh, it's the same thing. It's not two different objects in the sky. So, all right. Melissa, I think you're next. Did you find the Pleiades or not?
Well, yes, I did. But does somebody have Orion? Before we started, you mentioned Orion, Mary Lou. Was anybody doing anything on Orion? Because I have some interesting information.
You mean Orion?
Orion, sorry.
Right. No, if you want to do our Orion and then your Pleiades, that's fine. What'd you find?
Okay. It's just part of Pleiades. Well,
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you have my
Yes, we have it.
attachments I sent.
We have the image. Is that what you're talking about? The sky with
Yes.
Orion, Taurus, and the Pleiades? Yep.
Okay. This Pleiades are also called the Seven Sisters, and it's in the northwest constellation of Taurus, and it's one of the star clusters that is closest to Earth. So if you want to see it in the sky, you go into Orion, and from his belt, I think the next image will show a close-up of Pleiades and the seven stars and the seven sisters.
Yeah.
And it's, again, one of the closest star groups to the Earth. Now, Pleione, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, because I already screwed up Orion.
Orion.
The mother of the seven daughters, these seven stars, was Pleione. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Mary Lou.
I don't know. Pronunciation of Greek and Latin and Arabic is not my forte.
I think it's Pleione, and she was the mother to the seven daughters. And she lived in southern Greece, and she married Atlas and gave birth to these seven daughters. Now she was, in one account, traveling with her daughters and Orion, and Orion fell in love with her, and he tried to, one version says attack her, another version more romantically suggests that he just was overcome with passion. I prefer that narrative. And she escaped, but Orion sought her for over 7 years, never could quite catch her. Finally, Zeus changed the girls into stars because he felt badly for them, because they had for 7 years been trying with their mother to evade Orion. Now, I'm not sure where Atlas was in all of this. I didn't get into that, but I'm not sure he was.
Atlas was the father. Didn't you say she married Atlas, so he was their father?
Pleione
married Atlas. Yeah.
But while she is traveling with her seven daughters,
what was Atlas doing?
Hello. I mean, I would like to find that out, but actually I was researching this 15 minutes before. So
Atlas was holding up the Earth. Atlas was busy holding up the Earth, right?
Okay, so maybe he was
All right.
take a time out and protect his wife and daughters.
Yeah.
But very interesting. The seven sisters, again, I should look at my other notes, but I'll just use this, have been very popular in Greek mythology and were used, not unlike what Mary Lou said earlier, in terms of when to plant. And Pleione was also the goddess of sailing. So they were heavily used in navigation, again, because they are among the closest stars to the Earth.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Oh, me. Okay, I'm next. We have too many, a Mel and a Melanie and a Melissa and a me and another Mary Lou, so I said me. Do we have my image of the supernova? Maybe? Yeah.
Oh, this,
Yeah. Mhm. I wasn't going to do anything, and then by a fluke, I found this in, I think, a National Geographic magazine or something. It's from the American Southwest in New Mexico, Chaco Canyon, where about a little over 1,000 years ago, there was a culture of Native Americans living there. And this is a pictograph, meaning they painted on the rock. Three things here. Can we get rid of?
no, we can't.
We can't get rid of that? All right. It looks like a crescent moon, a handprint, left hand, and this star shape. Well, the painting goes back to around shortly after 1054, when the big supernova went off, and everybody in the world, all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God, this brilliant new star that appeared in the sky. The Chinese recorded it, somebody else recorded it, and so archaeologists think that is a recording of that supernova. Now, the only question I have with it, when we studied twilight and the moon, the crescent moon, the upside down crescent moon only appears around the equator. Anywhere like, this is more like 35 degrees north. It would be more or less what we see, sitting on one of its horns. And then if you get to the poles, it's a smile. So I'm kind of wondering why they have if that is a crescent moon, why it's upside down. But I don't know. So that was my contribution. So who's next? Jordan, you still there? I don't know what's happened to Jordan.
Yeah, he's there.
He's there, but we can't hear you, Jordan.
He just unmuted himself.
Hello? We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Oh, okay.
All right, what about the Kaaba and the meteorite?
Okay, the Kaaba is, I believe, the most holy site in Islam. It's located in the Great Mosque in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. And I believe that the Hajj that all Muslims are supposed to go on is to go to the Kaaba. I think it's once in your lifetime.
Yep. If you are able. If you're really poverty stricken or really ill or have only one leg, you don't have to do it. But if you can, you should. Yes, once in your lifetime. It's a pilgrimage.
I didn't get, it took a little bit to find exactly like when it was made, but according to Islam, it was built by Abraham and his son Ishmael at 5,000 years ago. So I don't think I'm going to get any other answer, but that's what they say.
Yep. Well, that's the religious answer.
Yeah.
Many people don't realize Islam has many, many, many connections to both Judaism and Christianity, which you could say is the basis of their Islamic faith. So yes, in their tradition, it was built by Adam. And Ishmael, by the way, is one of his sons that you usually don't hear much about in the Old and the New Testament. Let me think. Well, we're not going into religion, and I'd have to review my knowledge in my head before I say the wrong thing. But what about the meteorite?
Oh, so the black stone is in one of the corners of the Kaaba, and I believe Muhammad was the one that put it inside. So from what I read, it was, they see it as, I guess they believed it originally was a white stone, but the sins of man turned it black, which I thought was interesting. I didn't see that much more about it, just then that was what it symbolizes.
Okay.
But it was a meteorite that they placed within the corner of the Kaaba.
The southeast corner, as I recall.
I think so.
Now, from what I had studied, that was a pre-Islamic holy site for the Arab people who were polytheists, many gods, and that was a pilgrimage site before Muhammad and the religion of Islam. And according, just like Jesus went to the temple and tossed out some things, Muhammad, supposedly, according to their legend and stories, went to the Kaaba and threw out the various idols that were being worshipped there. But he did not throw out a painting of Mary, the mother of Jesus, whom he revered, which I thought was interesting. Now I've never done any research, Jordan, and I don't think you found it either, as to when that meteorite hit the ground. But imagine if it did it like within the last 10,000 years, and there's simple tribes living in the area who believe, all the gods are up in the heavens, and all of a sudden this flaming rock comes flying down and lands with a thump at the edge of your camp, say. Well, that's obviously a message from the heavens. The gods are trying to tell you something. That's how I interpret it. So it becomes a holy site. And in Islam, they have a very interesting concept. Mecca is the center where the power of Allah, the God, comes straight down to the earth. Spread out like spokes on a wheel are the various mosques all around the world. And those mosques then, through the spokes to the center, are connected to the holy place, the sacred ground. So, okay.
I have a little bit more on it.
Pardon?
I have a little bit more about it.
Okay.
The astronomy section. So I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Qibla, or it's Qibla. I don't know how to pronounce that, how they do. But it's basically how all Muslims have to pray facing Mecca.
Right.
Use astronomy to figure out how to tell people to pray that direction. And it's based on 2 times a year the sun is directly over the Kaaba. You get the zenith. It's on
Didn't know that.
on May 27th and 28th at 12:18 Saudi Arabian time. And then it also happens on the 15th and 16th of July. I guess
Okay.
it's here, and that'll all be at 12:27. So they can use the shadow. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but they can tell based on the shadow, telling other places outside of Mecca which direction to pray.
Oh, I'll have to look that, Jordan, when you talk on the phone, I'll have to get more information on that because I did not know that. I did know that as the centuries went by, from the, let's say, 700 on up through, say, the 1500s, as Islam spread and got further away from the center, they were brilliant astronomers and surveyors, as well as other things. And as their ability to survey and know where north, south, east, west is, the alignment of their mosques with one wall facing Mecca got better and better and better. So if you go back to, let's say, Turkmenistan in the 800s, the mosques may not be perfectly aligned to Mecca. But 400 years later, when their surveying skills and astronomy knowledge grew, it's very much so. And if anybody has gone to New York City, north of, let me think, where the Museum of Natural History is, on whatever street that is, 84th Street or something, up in that section, just north, before you get to Harlem, back 30 or 40 years ago, they built a mosque. And anybody that's been to New York City, it's a grid city. North, south, east, west, the streets, all the houses line up, parallel to the sidewalks until you get to the mosque. And it's sitting on its property at an angle because one wall has to face Mecca, which for us would be over that way, southeast of here. I think that's kind of interesting. All right, Jordan, you done so we can move on?
Yeah.
All right. Where am I? Rima. Okay, she's busy at the library, so you're gonna read her. Rima had the Great Pyramid at Giza, Khufu, and two of the air, quote, air passages in what is essentially a solid chunk of stone. I figured out it sits on about 13 acres, which is a little more than the field in front of my house. So it's a huge, and it was almost 500 feet tall. And we did not achieve that until the Eiffel Tower, almost 4,500 years later. So the Egyptians were amazing in what they did with what they had. Okay, what have we got here?
So this is like a cross section of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this air shaft points directly to the star Thuban, which used to be the pole star. Which used to be the pole star for the Egyptians.
In other words, we talked about, Melissa, just catch up here. The axis of our Earth is like a top. The Earth is like a top spinning. If you've ever spinned a top on a table, it doesn't spin straight up. It's at an angle, so it wobbles. And the point of the top over time will shift where it's pointing up in the celestial sphere. It just happens for the last 1,000 years, it's more or less been Polaris. You want to which is this one? Yeah. But back in the day, 4,500 years ago, it was Thuban. Okay. And by the way, she meant these pyramids, each of the four sides faces one of the cardinal directions, which is often the case of ancient buildings. One side faces true north, etc. Okay.
And then the southern shaft points directly to Orion's belt. And these stars are linked to the father of the Egyptian god, Sa.
By the way, one of the reasons we don't know how to pronounce ancient Egyptian words, like Hebrew, and maybe Arabic, I'm not sure, like Hebrew, they don't use vowels. It's just a bunch of consonants. So early Egyptologists said, oh, how do we pronounce this? Well, let's stick an A in here. Oh no, let's do an E. So sometimes when you read the text, depending on who translated it, you have different spellings. So once again, we don't really know how to pronounce those words. They just assumed and put in certain vowels. All righty. Oh, is that it on her report?
Yep.
Okay, so to add to that, in ancient Egyptian religion, Orion was considered the god of Cyrus, the god of death and rebirth. And the idea was the pharaoh, the king, in those days, he was not called a pharaoh, by the way, in the old kingdom. He was just the king. But he was really God's representative on earth, sort of a semi-demigod. And when he died, he would join the sun in the heavens and become immortal and a god. But to do that, he, in the spirit, probably in body, thinking of the way the Egyptians thought, first had to go to Thuban and then up to the belt and hang out. I don't know for how long, maybe a minute, maybe a day, I'm not sure. And then he would become a full-fledged god in the sky. That's one theory. And it's like the Rorschach test. You can look at things like this and you can look at the stars and you can come up with a variety of possibilities. This seems to be one of the more accepted theories. Okay, who's next after Rima? Sandy, you're not here today, are you? No. Okay, I'll do what Sandy was supposed to do. She had to look up Stonehenge. Did she send anything in? No. Okay. We all know more or less. You want to just grab Stonehenge? Do we have a view from the top? Well, Melanie's playing with that to see if you can get an overview, a blueprint of Stonehenge. Most of us think of it in connection with the sun. However, there were at least two aspects of it that had to do with the moon. In beginning, Stonehenge was just a circle in the ground, a ditch, and a berm. And the chalk soils of southern England, if you dig down 6 feet, you get white chalk. So we dug this trench 6 feet deep. A white line about, I always forget, 100 or 300 feet across. Isn't that terrible? It's either 100 foot or 300 foot diameter. And in the beginning, about 5,000 years ago, that's all basically it was, 1 or 2 stones. And eventually the rest of it over about a 1,500-year period was built up. But if, I'm not sure that this is correct, but let's say going in this direction towards that stone, let's say that's east. Outside the circle, so between the circle and that stone and the highway, facing the eastern side was 55 wooden posts in 6 short parallel rows. And they charted that old Saros cycle, the 18.6 years between the moon's rising in the east, the northernmost part to the southernmost part, roughly 9 years to get from one end to the other, and then another 9 years to go back. I didn't know about that. Sandy or somebody, in doing some research, because I wasn't sure if Sandy could be here, I discovered that. But what I knew was the 56 Aubrey holes. Mr. Aubrey, A-U-B-R-E-Y, an astroarchaeologist, I think they call him. They're partly archaeologists and they're partly astronomers. Interesting combination. And he did his research about 40 years ago or so. And he thinks that those post holes are gone. The wood's all rotted. And when you dig around, you can find the organic remnants of what had been 56 posts inside the circle. That's not inside. I don't think inside the stones, but in here where it's grass, I think. And he thinks they kept track of lunar eclipses. Now that they argue that theory, some people don't agree. But when I read the book,
Wait a minute, they keep track of what?
the lunar eclipse cycle.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So if you are interested in this, okay, what time is it? Okay, Melanie, who runs the machine, has to go in 10 minutes. So we have to wrap up here. The end of that, who's left? Debbie, Abu Simbel.
You on mute here.
Can you just leave it on? Oh, she has to take the computer. All right. So tighten up, folks. We've got 10 minutes.
I'll go quick.
Sorry. Oh, there's the man of the moon, the man in the moon.
Hi.
So I had Abu Simbel. Do you have the picture of the temple?
Did you email it?
I know I sent 3 pictures in. Well, Abu Simbel is found in southern Egypt, and it was built during Ramses II's reign. Took about 20 years to carve both of the temples. The largest temple is to Ramses himself. So the first picture that I sent, which shows the front of the large temple that was built right into the rock face, has 4 seated Ramses on the front of it. In between the 2 seated figures of Ramses is a tunnel that runs about 180 feet into the cliff.
Okay, that's the most important one. We've got a picture,
I got it.
Debbie.
Okay, so the temple was constructed so that the axis, there's the tunnel, and the axis of that tunnel was supposed to line up with the sun on 2 days of the year, so that the inner sanctuary, which is at the end of the tunnel. You can just see it. And I think the third picture I sent shows 4 seated persons that were carved in the back of that sanctuary. 3 of them are gods. 1 is Ramses II himself.
Yeah, there we go.
So on October 22nd and February 22nd, the sun will directly shine down that tunnel into the inner sanctuary and light up 3 of the gods, 2 of the gods and Ramses himself. The third god is the god of the dead, and he's over on the edge, and the intention is that the sun never hit him because he should always be in the dark. But on October 22nd and February 22nd, when the light hits all 3 of those carvings, the idea was that it revitalized Ramses and rose him to the level of God. So it sort of deified him, which was his goal. The reason that October 22nd and February 22nd were chosen was because October 22nd is believed to be the birth date of Ramses, and February 22nd was the day that he was coronated as king. So he was specifically interested in having this temple, which was built after a great battle that he was in and supposedly victorious in. Through the 20 years that it took to build this temple, the object was to glorify him and put him at the level of the most important gods at the time. So I don't know if you can see the last picture, the third one that I sent, but you'll see the inner sanctuary of the temple.
That's the
Oh.
external. Okay.
I sent the external Ramses temple, and then I sent a picture of the tunnel, and then I sent a
Okay.
picture of the inner sanctuary.
We've got them.
Okay.
Okay. Alrighty. Regina, we're running short. This is important. Can we wait with your report till next time?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say here, one thing was sort of a snarky joke. Ramsey II reminds me of a recent president we've had.
I was thinking the same
I
thing.
just can't resist. Glorify me, 4 big statues of me. No, I'm there with the 3 gods. Da, 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 da. Anyway,
Yep.
in all my studying of ancient, what time? Do you have to go right now? Do I have time to give you your assignment?
Yep.
Okay, I'll leave off my little talk about assumptions, and everybody get your paper and pencil because we're having a wonderful topic next time on weather in the solar system. How many minutes have I got? 5? Yep. 5. Okay, very quickly. You need 2 things to have weather: atmosphere and a heat source. Usually weather is considered precipitation, what kind, what's it made of, and the wind. Atmosphere, think of mass and distance from the sun. If you're too little, all the atmosphere you ever had, if you had it, is going to escape because you don't have enough gravity to hang on to it. If you're too close to the sun, it's going to be too hot and it's going to boil off. So you need atmosphere and a heat source. You measure the precipitation and the wind. Those are the 2 aspects of it. To have an atmosphere, you have to consider how big a body do you have, how dense is it, how much mass, and the distance from the sun. And the heat source is complicated. We think of the sun, yes, but deep down in the middle of our Earth, there's leftover heat from the origins. It's still hot down there and it's slowly cooling off. Sometimes there's radioactive decay that gives off heat. And sometimes if say a moon is close to a big planet, just like we have tides, there's a push and a pull, creating friction that also produces heat. So that's everything you have to think about. Now, here's the people and who you're going to go study and see, is there weather on your particular body? Melissa, you have Venus.
I have what?
Venus.
Venus.
Mary Lou, you have Mars. Jordan, you have Jupiter. Sandy has Ganymede, I'll call her up. Bob and Ann, I'll call up, have Tishan. Melanie, you have Uranus. Debbie, you have Neptune. Regina, you have Triton, Triton, that's the big moon of Neptune. And Rima, okay, what? Rima has Pluto. So all of these planets and moons, right, do have weather of one sort or another, not necessarily like our weather. So we'll give out prizes. Who has the strongest winds? Who has the weirdest snow? Whatever, okay? Who has a strange source of heat? All right. And then I'll finish up on Abu Simbel and Regina's medicine wheels next time, because this was a busy, full program today. And she has to cut out early. Sometimes we go over, but she has a meeting. So phone me up if you have any questions. All right. There's the man in the
Yep,
moon.
thank
again.
you.
All right, guys.
Nice to meet all of you.
Yeah. So nice
Yep,
to see you,
thank you for
Melissa.
joining us.